like we said, we have a bunch of folks out there who could be up here sharing, but there's two extraordinary stories going on. And your resurrection stories, as we're calling them. And we thought, why don't we start by just giving us kind of an overall view of what the stories are. And I'll just start on my right and say, Sherry, if you'll share a bit of yours, and then we'll have Morgan share.
Okay. First, I want to be sure everybody can hear me because I have a soft voice. My story begins when we got married, because as a young girl, you fall in love, and one of the things I asked my husband was, do you believe in God? And he said, well, of course I do. Well, that was all it needed. Love covers everything, right? And we had our family, and I took the kids to church, and I was saying, you want to go to church with me? Oh, not today. Well, then after a while, finally he says, I'll tell you when I'm ready. So I thought, okay, I'll just be quiet and I'll just pray. I prayed for 40 years. And one day, back in 2005, I was just feeling so broken because I thought he's not going to be with me in heaven. And it worried me and it upset me. And I said, Lord, if it takes my life, then do it. Do whatever it takes, because I'm ready. I know where I'm going. And just do whatever it takes to get him saved. 1 week to the day, I got up, ready to go to work, and I started throwing up, and I threw up, and I threw up. And he comes in and he says, what's wrong? I said, you got to take me to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, I started having chest pain. We got to Hendricks, and they ran all kinds of tests, couldn't find anything wrong. Finally, they said, well, we'll do a heart catheter. So I don't know, I'm laying there, I don't care what they do, just make it go away, So they did that, nothing. So finally they said, okay, we're going to send you to the heart hospital in Indianapolis. And they called the Lifeline helicopter, and they were loading me onto that. And my husband had a piece of paper in his pocket. Our daughter had called him a couple days before and said, tell Mom to show this to the doctor. And it said pheochromocytoma, which is a tumor on your adrenal gland. And so he said to the doctor, he says, my daughter gave me this, and he showed it. And he says, oh my, we can check that. So they brought me back off the helicopter, did a ultrasound, I think it was. And they said, yeah, that's what it is. So then they sent me to St. Vincent's. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm feeling pretty good. I figure, well, they're going to run a few tests and send me home. And 2 o'clock in the morning, after that, I had a massive heart attack. Of course, I'm not aware of a lot of the things my family is because I was out of it. But finally, at one point, towards the end of all this, they started telling my husband, we need to unplug her. She's not going to make it. And my husband said no. He said, I think she's still alive. And he said, Lord, if you will save my wife, I will turn my life over to you. And so they kept saying to him, we need to unplug her. And he said, nope. He said, she's not dead yet. So finally the doctor said, all right, I'll meet you at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'll prove to you that she's brain dead. So the next morning, right before that happened, I'm having kind of I don't know what to call it, a dream or experience, but I knew I was on the edge of heaven. My father had been dead for 3 years, and I was talking to him. And finally he says to me, it's time to go back, baby girl. And I said, okay. Well, the next thing I knew, I heard somebody clapping their hands and saying, Sherry, it's time to wake up. And I opened my eyes, and the doctor about fainted. When I came to, I couldn't walk, talk, I couldn't do anything. I had to learn everything all over again. But the Lord blessed me, and it came back pretty fast. So because of that, I'm able to tell my story and say how God brought me back from the dead. I mean, the monitor that they had me plugged up into, it flatlined, and I was flatlined for 3 days. And hard to believe, but it happened. So that's my story, and I love to share it. So.
That's amazing, Sherry.
So Morgan, how does, in a kind of a quick summary, how does your story go?
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that, gosh, it's going to be hard to summarize such a big portion of my life into
Yeah, it was hard for me too.
a small segment. But in 2016, while I was pregnant with Trinity, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So not only was my life at stake, but my baby's life was at stake. So all of our decisions that we made were based on my health, but definitely with Trinity's health in mind as well. And not only that, but also having to think about the other 2 children that I care for. And so just throughout the course of it, it was basically over a course of a little more than 2 years, where I went through 9 surgeries and 12 rounds of chemotherapy and 3 months of radiation. And it was a long journey for sure about it all, but to God be the glory, because he was the one who got us through. And I think of some key things that happened. So as a woman who is about to have a baby, breastfeeding is such a bonding thing between a mother and a daughter, and so that was important to me. And so I ended up collecting milk from different mothers, and that was really special to be able to get out to meet different mothers. I had a friend who was a photographer of babies, and she brought me milk. And Paula's daughter, Kelly, brought me a box of milk for Trinity. And I think back to, gosh, what amazing people God put into my life. And there was this one woman in particular who had just went through, her baby was born, but she was born with anencephaly, so it didn't have all of its skull. But she still had so much milk to give to me for Trinity, which was amazing. It was a healing moment for her to be able to still use her milk to help my baby grow, and a healing moment for me. It was very touching. But and my cousins from Florida, they got milk, put it in coolers, drove it over to my sister in Georgia, and they brought it up to me. And things like that, where God puts these people in your life who are just amazing when you're down and on your luck and down in your lowest. And there was also another woman who reached out to me because my first diagnosis down in Bloomington, they said, "You're going to be fine, just go get radiation, and that's going to be it." And I said, "Okay, well, that's exciting. This is going to be over soon." And but a family friend of mine, talked to his sister about it, who happened to be a plastic surgeon here at Hendricks, and she reached out to me and called me and said, "Morgan, they're giving you the wrong protocol here. You need to take extreme action, and you need to be around for your babies as long as you possibly can. So come and see me at my office." And I said, gosh, she's a family friend. She has my best interest in her heart. And so I went there. I didn't see her specifically, but I saw another woman in her office, and they gave me a completely different protocol than the one down in Bloomington. And they said, "You need to have a mastectomy." And so I was taken aback by that, but it ended up being So we went into surgery, and I was expecting to have everything completely finished at that time too. I had a special thing where they were going to take my belly fat and make me a new breast out of it, and it was going to be great. And then I woke up, and Josh was by my side, and he just said, "Morgan, well, it's not working out like we were thinking it was going to." And they found a second type of cancer. And so, just waking up thinking that you're going to look a certain way and not looking that way. And then, but throughout that course, that's when I learned I had to go through chemotherapy and radiation. So of course lose my hair and all of that. But you think of there's those moments when you just have to be okay with your new normal, and it changed every time after every surgery. I have a new normal that I have to be all right with. But through that process, I was reminded that God makes beauty from the ashes. And through that, those silver linings of those moments of really difficult times with our family, you think, man, where's this going? How is this going to change, or what's the reasons behind it? And looking back, I can realize that those reasons I went through that, our family went through that, was to bring our family closer to God. And I see those silver linings, and I think about we were just kind of lukewarm. We weren't going to church every Sunday, and hey, we're here now continually. And I feel like it really did change so much for our family's spiritual life, that those things happened. And I have to remind myself that God does have a reason for these hard times. And if the reason is to depend more on Him and to let go of our own control, because I couldn't be leaning on my own understanding in those moments because I had no understanding. But when I leaned on Him, it made it better. And I was praying, I wasn't praying, hey, scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, God. I was just praying, gosh, I want to be with my family, and I want them to know God like you're showing me what you are. So
it's kind of incredible in the story. One thing I'm hoping people realize, from whether we're talking the death of Christ or Lazarus or what happened in your lives, death has to come along with resurrection. In some way, the two will be combined. And it's interesting, it's more than interesting, it's inspiring from the standpoint of your witness, that these are two very, very different stories and approaches. And I'm just going to bounce back into yours for a bit here, Sherry. You had the doctors convinced you were gone. Yours is a really Lazarus type experience going on. But there's a metaphorical side to this too, in that there can be death physically, and then there can be death of, like yours, even though you were under the threat of death, there was a lot of things, the old normal continued to die for a new normal. So you have two different answers to this next question. In your experience in this resurrection story, what would you say are the things that died? And then we'll get on to the things that came to life, that were raised to life. What were the things that died?
You mean for me, or for both of us, or just in any?
In the whole situation, I know yours is a little different because here you are, you're strong in your faith, 40 years, praying for Bob, what you're doing. So there's a lot in your experience that were dying and coming to life around you, not just in you. Now, yours was physical, so we'll go around you. And see what
Okay. Well, the one thing about this, I think that emphasizes the death. Everyone was trying to make Bobby accept that I was dying, that I wasn't going to be here. And then when I flatlined, they all tried, and the doctors would come and talk to him, they all tried to convince him that I was gone. And he kept telling them, nope, I don't believe it. God didn't bring her this far to let her die now. And so that's when finally the doctor said, meet me at her bedside in the morning and I'll prove it to you. So the death of my husband's old life, because when we came home from the hospital, he wasn't the same person. I mean, I knew it immediately. He was more sensitive to my needs, and we've both always been pretty independent, but he took care of me. He just did everything to try to make sure that my life was going to be better and that we were going to make it together. And that it just changed our whole relationship.
Yeah, and it sounds like that impact in its own variation happened in both. So I get, we almost could have Bob up here talking, but there was a death of disbelief, really, I guess, in a raising to, which we'll get to, a raising to the new Bob that came on. And I'm sure with your family and your children as well. In your situation, Morgan, just to pop over, you already hit so much on this. It was like you thought one thing and then boom, boom, boom. If you were to take kind of from your story, what you just told us, how would you say, here are the things in my resurrection story, these are the things that died along the way?
For me, it would be my priorities shifted. Things, I think back to those moments and I'm like, gosh, in those times when you're faced with your mortality, it's all of the things, these earthly things aren't important. The money is, whatever money that you've amassed throughout your life is not important. All of the trinkets and things that you have, it's not like you're going to be able to say, hold on, God, let me pack my bag. You gotta realize none of that is important, and the only thing is your family and God and the time that you have with your family. And no amount of money or things is going to give you more time here on earth. You don't have time to fix your relationship. You don't have time to make things right with your spouse, or time to make it right with that person who you had an argument with. Time is of the essence, and you need to use it wisely. And that was
so for you
time to be a good mother. That was for me. It was like, oh, I don't have time to make up that. I need to be that now if I can be. As best I can be.
So, which is, in a nutshell, you're saying the biggest thing that died, even with everything you were going through physically, the biggest thing that died was the old priorities, the old way of living. And that's, we have to understand that even from the resurrection itself. But if something doesn't die, something else can't come to life.
Right.
So here comes the fun part. What came to life? We know we've got the new Bob. What else is there other things you would say came to life? How about in yourself, even?
Well, I'm kind of like her. I'm sorry. Kind of like Morgan, my priorities changed. I tended to be a perfectionist, and there were things that I just thought had to be done a certain way, and all of a sudden I realized that wasn't important. And relationships were, and I began to realize that we don't know how much time we're going to have. We don't know if we have the next minute, the next week, the next year. We have no idea, because it happened so fast with me. We just don't know. So we need to be prepared. We need to have our hearts straight, our life straight. We need to let our families know how much we love them. And we need to tell them how much God loves them. And how God wants them to be part of His family. And you have to do it now. And I think it comes naturally as you get older, because you start thinking, how much time am I going to have left? But then it's like, I got to tell them. And I've always been a person that's been, I wouldn't say shy, but I didn't want to offend anybody when I talked about Jesus. And I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I wanted to respect their privacy and their thoughts. But I wanted them to know. And it took that fear away. That was one of the things that, like, do you want to hear a story? And it became a lot easier for me to talk to other people about what I went through and about my faith and how much I love the Lord.
So a whole new, even within yourself, then there was the rising of an evangelistic spirit in a way that came to life in you. And here you are. Can you imagine yourself being up here prior to the whole experience?
Maybe, maybe not. It just, I could have been up here, but I still would have been nervous and full of fear.
And you wouldn't have this story.
And I wouldn't have this story. Yeah.
That is amazing. Morgan, you're flushed with, I can see your face gets bright red glowing. But you said so many things of things that died and came to life. But in your own words, you kind of process it all. What are the grand things that came to life?
I would say definitely prioritizing this part of our life. Making sure that my children know the Lord, instead of just, praying every now and then, hey, we're making sure that we're going to church regularly. We're trying to be more involved in this part of our community. And, but I also, gosh, I got such a grateful heart now. I had a grateful heart then, but even more so now, because boy, do I have a lot to be grateful for. I feel like I have been given a second chance at life.
A second chance. Boy, I'm glad you used that term, because when we looked at these two lines of the saints being raised, I was thinking of people like Ananias and, Simeon and Anna is who I meant. That at the birth of Christ, there were two Old Testament old people who said, this is Messiah, this is him, I've got to see him. But they never got to really testify. They were dead before he was. But I picture these people being brought back to life. I now have a second chance to tell you the full story. So, the idea of the second chance is amazing. As both of you were talking, I thought the verse I kind of skipped through here, but it fits so well. Colossians 3:1. Here we're talking about what this resurrection story is. It says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. If that isn't the story I'm hearing here. Put to death, therefore, what belongs to your earthly nature, aka the old self, the old man, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, just seeing things the way the world is. You used to walk in these ways in life that you once lived. Rid yourselves of all anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge, in the image of the Creator. So we talked about how you died. We talked about what died in you. at what came to life around you. So here we are now in this born again existence that you folks are going through. What's the biggest challenge you face now? Because the challenges don't stop, do they? It's just because you had this experience doesn't mean that now life has been just one bowl of gravy or whatever since.
Well, I think one of the challenges that I didn't expect was you never get finished. You reach a level in your faith, in your Bible study, and your reading, and you think, boy, I just, it's not that I've got it all, but you see how much farther you are than where you used to be. But then there's always more. There's always another level. It's always deeper. It's like how many times I've read the Bible and I read something, I thought, I don't remember that being in there. And it is why I overlooked it or why my eyes didn't catch it. It didn't mean anything to me at the time when I read it. But then I go back and I think, wow, I can't believe that. And it pertains to me today. And it's just amazing how God will bring out things in your life or in the Bible or something someone says to you, and it just makes you think, and it makes you take it deeper, and it makes you want to actually give up anything that stands in the way of your relationship with God.
Morgan?
Oh, ask the question again.
Okay, I was sitting here listening to this inspiring answer. I was like, what did I even ask? But the question just basically is, you've gone through this incredible experience, both in death and new life, but life keeps going on. New challenges come up. What are the challenges now?
Yeah, I would say we're always unfinished. We're always going to be imperfect. But that's okay, because through God's grace, He gives us the grace to be what we are, but as long as we're working towards being better. That's mainly for me, what
So
like I was saying.
And in there is your quest for becoming better. Is there anything that you say, here's the new challenge I'm trying to work with as you go along?
Yeah, to be a better wife, to be a better mother, and obviously to be better in my spiritual walk. I feel like we're always growing and moving towards trying to be the better version of ourselves. And
Yep. It's called sanctification. Very good. I know as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at these men out there. We need to have a men's night sometime, because I know Josh has an amazing story. Obviously, Bob does as well. And they could come up and give versions of their answers. But while we have you ladies up here, let me ask two other little questions. You've kind of covered these anyway, just processing them. But here you are through your resurrection story. How have you affected people around you? The loved ones, the close ones around you. Specifically to that question, how would you feel you affected those around you, closest to you? I'm going to look for nods or shaking of heads out there, guys.
Well, it's hard for me to, I hadn't really thought about it that way. I think some of the people in the family, if I talk about God, they want to listen. There are people that, where I worked, I was working in a bank, and there were a lot of people who were customers or didn't really know me that well, but they would come up to me and they say they heard about what I went through and they'd want to know more about it and that kind of a thing. So I've known my whole life that God had a mission for me, but I figured out in my own mind what it was, and that was to be an encourager and to teach people about Jesus. And I was kind of proud of myself that I figured that all out at a young age. And through all this, like I said, there's more. It doesn't bother me to stand over a way pray with someone. It doesn't bother me to talk about my faith like it used to. I was easily embarrassed, and all that's gone. It's all gone. It just, if you want to hear about Jesus, let me tell you. And you talked about the evangelistic. That's the one thing that I never thought I would ever be. And yet that's the one thing that seems like it gets more every day.
Isn't it funny? God does have a sense of humor. He says, I'm going to take this quiet person and turn them into an evangelist. That is great.
For me, I think about everything that happened, and how people came out of the woodworks and messaging me or calling me and saying, Morgan, I want you to know that you made this impact in my life, and people that I hadn't talked to in 20 years. And I'm like, who would have thought that one interaction with that one person that long ago made a difference? Morgan, you were kind to me in a time when people were not kind to me. And I had no idea. Those were things that I was just being kind in the moment, but to them, it was a memorable moment. And so that also, that brought to light to me, gosh, every moment you have an opportunity to be interacting one way or another with someone, and you never know how that's going to affect them. But also with my children, I think my children now they can be scared now of Jeremiah. He'll say sometimes, Mom, I don't want you to die, or Dad to Josh, I don't want you to die, Dad. And but we have, because of what we have with God, I have the ability to say, son, if we do die, it's okay, because I know where we're going. And you're coming, and I'm going to meet you there. And we have to be okay with that, because it's going to be a glorious day when we do.
What's beautiful in what you said, too, is that Morgan has always been a wonderful person. I said, if you can't get along with Morgan, you can't get along with anyone. But that's wonderful. You were kind to people then. But what's really interesting is when you were in this death's door thing, they had a chance to give back. And they had a chance to say to you.
And it uplifted me.
Yeah, it uplifted you and gave them an opportunity to step up. A wonderful, wonderful thing. I saved the hardest question for last. Yeah, you guys ready for this one? And then, so who knows? It may be a long or short of it. Here it is. You've both gone through these incredible experiences, these deep dive in resurrection. If you had to share, now the new evangelist, Sherry, if you had to share what is, say, the one timeless truth you would pull from this and tell someone?
I think it's kind of like what she talked about. God's in control. The politics and the things that are going on today, it scares people. And of course I want good government, but I feel like it doesn't really matter, because God's in control. And just like you said, when the time comes for me to go, or my husband, or my children, anybody, it's okay, because I'll see you there. And that makes a difference, I think, in eliminating the fear of death.
Yeah, and the great thing that's ongoing, God is in control. That may sound simple, but how much trouble do we have living that? Unless maybe we see somebody like you who's gone through what you have. God is in control, and I know where I'm going. Did we steal any answers, or is there another timeless truth you can pull out of the morning?
I think of the verse, yea, walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And your rod and staff comfort me. And the key word for me with that is you're walking through. You're not sticking down there in the valley in the shadow of the death. You are walking through it. and there is light on the other side. And be that here on earth, coming through a situation like this, or hey, if it is death, you're going through and you're getting to where you need to be going. That, for me, took a long time to figure out.
Oh.
But for me, it's my timeless truth.
It's interesting to me that you brought up that verse, because that was a verse that helped me through everything I went through. I would say that over and over and over and get comfort and peace, and that's what got me through.
Yeah.
That certainly qualifies. You take a psalm that's 3,000 years old, and you're saying, this is the literal truth.
Yeah.
That's pretty timeless truth. Pretty timeless truth. So we want to thank you for sharing your story. What's amazing is there's so many out there could say, you know, some variation and tell their story. Everybody can have this resurrection story.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it so much. Let's give them a hand. I know.